everybody, it's Nix here from Key Features, and I'm doing a video reply to Simon at Hermit's Cave. Thank you so much, Simon, for making this hashtag. It's really appreciated for people like me. I've literally just decided to do a YouTube channel, so it's great to have this opportunity to introduce myself to you and other people. And I really appreciate your space online as well. It's really great in this day and age to have such a friendly and welcoming place to share an interest. And I think it's no mean feat to keep that in this day and age. So thank you very much. And with no further ado, I'll get on with the A to Zs. So A, what sparked my spiritual journey or awakening? Well, with tarot, it was very much my dad, and this is his deck that he used for many years. I thought he'd been doing tarot since the 80s, but I was home this weekend and I decided as I was doing this video, I was going to do a couple of little bits with him, and I found out that actually his interest in tarot goes over 6 decades. So he's 81 now. This was his tarot classic deck that he read with, which I still absolutely love, and obviously it's going to be a treasured possession of mine. And also I have his twin brother, who sadly we lost a couple of years ago, his identical twin, and we found this in his home when we were clearing out his stuff, which is a really old miniature Rider-Waite deck. Now, I don't really know much about dating these things, but this looks quite old to me, I would say, and it's probably as old as I am, and I was born in 1971. It's been stuck in the corner there by a little bit of sellotape very carefully, and it had clearly been used. There's a little instruction deck in there as well. And we didn't know that his twin did tarot, but, you know, they were very connected and quite similar and eccentric. But, yeah, it was my dad who first got me interested in tarot, although I was quite cynical when I was younger. But I really want you to meet my dad. So, yeah, let's hear from him.
My name is Martin Key. My professional name when I was performing was Magic Martin, because I was a magician. I'm 81 now. When I started doing magic, I was in my teens, 15. And I suppose I got into tarot not long after, because I found a tarot pack, and I got into doing magic of the mind, which people call mentalism. And this seemed an ideal prop for me to use. In fact, I worked out a few routines which I published, and later on, having done magic tricks with them, I started looking at the pictures as well, and I thought they were fascinating pictures of people and things and such like, and I started looking at the meanings of the cards and doing readings with them, which I did quite a bit of. People got quite impressed with my readings, and I was quite impressed myself, really, because they were quite accurate. I don't know why, but there they are, being something in me. You know, that's how I got into the tarot, and I had a few different packs, but I suppose this one and the old classic one are my favourites. There's so much to learn about the tarot, the history, going back many years, where it came from, although I think the origins of the tarot as it stands today is quite obscure. But I think I found that you can look at cards and get your own meanings from them. You don't have to read a book to find the meanings. you discover them yourself. And as you're doing the reading, they come to you as you put them in. So you have the Queen of Cups now, you know, something cups is to do with love and water and all the rest of it. So you can use those, read those ideas which you've got to read someone's personality or even their future sometimes. So that's how I use them, or used to use them. I haven't done the reading for a while.
Where did you mainly do your readings when you were doing them?
I did them at various clubs and institutions around the village where I live. I did it at some fates and things people like to read, and then I found doing my close-up magic. I used to use people like the readings as well as the magic. I go and read people. I like the magician, which is obviously my card because I was a magician or am a magician. And shared there with the cups and balls, which is one of the tricks that I do. I've done it for years, and I've been doing it for many, many years, decades. And I still do cups and balls every now and then. You need to keep your cards special and wrapped in silk, not just toss them around like an old pack of cards, but keep them special because they are special.
So that's my awakening with my lovely father. My key beliefs, well, a few years ago I started following Imbolc I had a sort of calling from the goddess Breed, or Bridget as she's also known. There's been a few goddesses that have sort of stood out for me in recent years. There's Bridget, there's Hecate, there's also Goddess Bagalamukhi, which I wear a pendant to Goddess Bagalamukhi, and I also have a yantra for her. So I do a meditation to Bagalamukhi. She's a tantric deity, one of Dash Mahavidyas. There's 10 great wisdoms, which are all embodiments of the goddess, and it includes Kali as one of them, who I've also made a pottery Kali, and so that's an important part of my belief. But I think with tarot, I believe in intuition and manifestation, and I think those are two sides of the same thing in a way. We do all, I think, have this very strong sense of intuition, and I don't know where it comes from. You know, anyone who tells you they know these things, well, who knows? Maybe they do know, but I certainly don't. And for me, I realised about my strength of intuition at the start of the pandemic, because when I first heard about coronavirus on, I think it was very early, it was on the 31st of December when it was first alerted by that early alert organisation. And I've never been one to worry about these things. You know, there's certain types of people, aren't there, that get very worried about germs and things spreading. But I've always sort of thought, no, that's not a big deal. But this one, it really caught my eye very early on, to the extent where in early January, I woke up one day shaking and thought this is going to be a massive deal. And you might think I'm making this up, but I started posting about it in a crazy way on Facebook. I was finding articles from the South China Post and all sorts of things telling people we've got to be, you know, just be really careful. I was trying to tell my parents not to go on public transport. Everybody was laughing at me. And I also bought face masks, and I said it's airborne. It needs to be these filtered masks, and that they're going to start telling us that we can just cough into a tissue and, you know, wash your hands. And lo and behold, all of this actually came true. And it got, by the time of half term in February, I was going crazy with what people were doing. I personally wasn't leaving the house, and I got quite upset with my parents who are elderly and have respiratory issues. Anyway, it all came to pass, and people said to me, oh, I bet you're going to start reminding us all and sharing those stories that you were doing. And the weirdest thing was my computer at that time, all my internet history started showing. I was on the computer and it would come up on my browser, everything I'd been looking for, and then it was disappearing. And I called Apple because I was quite worried about what was going on with my computer, and they went into it and they said, oh, that shouldn't be there. There's some sort of bug on your computer, and they sorted it out for me. And then I went into my Facebook, and lo and behold, all of that information, all the posts I've been sharing, they'd also disappeared. Now, someone I know who works in tech said, oh, well, sometimes when they write things over and things disappear, but it was that very specific. So anyway, I'm going to sound like a conspiracy theorist, which I really am not. But something very strange went on in early 2020. And I realised that I did have intuition, and I think we all do. And I think tarot allows us to tap into it. And I also believe in manifestation. And to me, that is the opposite of intuition, or rather it's the same. But I think if you're doing card draws and you put them on your altar, you need to be very careful, because there's divination, which is telling yourself what might happen. So say you draw a tower card and that's telling you something to be wary of. Don't put that on your altar card is all I'm saying, because if you've pulled that and you then put that on your altar, it's also manifestation. And I think for me, manifestation is putting your will forward to what you want to happen. It's not drawing a card and going, okay, this is, unless it is something you want to happen as well. It's in some ways altering the energies by manifesting. So that's what I believe. I believe sorcery is those two things. It's on the one hand using the cards as a tool for the intuition you already have to tap into it on a more regular and deeper level. And then it's also possible to use the cards to manifest things. And for me, there are two overlapping sections. You have the possibility of divination here and the possibility of what you can manifest here. And then the better you get, the larger that intersection will be of possibility. So that's what I believe. Okay, so C, what cards do I feel most connected with right now? Well, obviously these ones I feel very connected with because of the sentimental value. But in terms of the ones that I've chosen, the cards I feel most connected to at the moment, it's this deck here, the Sacred Rose. And I like this. I think this is an artist's deck. There's the information on her here. Born October 15th, 1948. Johanna Sherman became interested in tarot in 1965 when she purchased her first tarot deck. And I think I'll just read you a little bit in here. Inspired by the artistry of medieval stained glass windows and Byzantine icons, the artwork of Johanna Sherman provides a definitive link with the belief in the divinity of nature prevailed during pre-Christian times. Thus, instead of using the lotus mandala of the Middle East, the Sacred Rose Tarot draws on the symbolic rose of Western iconography and the ancient Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, and the cosmos itself, time and space. Anyway, she worked on these in the late 70s and early 80s, and I feel that this deck particularly is great for people that are creative and want to pursue a creative path. I love the iconography, which is not too heavy, but there's just enough in terms of the blue rose of impossibility and the white rose of purity, and the faces, because I can struggle with faces that are too close up. They're not too close, just got enough expression. And the cardstock is lovely, which always helps the feel of the cards. And I've done some very important readings, not just for myself, but for other people with these. And I felt that it delivered the cards that it needed to deliver. Yeah, this deck is very special. And it says it's pre-Christian, and I suppose, but I think, you know, that is obviously, can be read in a Christian way as well as the pagan astrological way. And that's another thing about this deck. It doesn't impose a belief system. It's open to belief systems. It's accepting. And I think it has her energy in it. And that brings me on to daily practice. Do you have a daily spiritual or tarot routine? Yes, I very much do. My routine at the moment is I'm trying to circulate all my decks, and I'm using the Decans, and I'm using this deck here. So basically when I get a deck, I do an interview with it, and then I assign it onto a card on this meta deck, which is obviously 78 cards, this DIY tarot. And then I put the decks I've done interviews with onto one of the cards. So there's Circe there, she's 4 of Cups. And then I choose for each decan, which is about 10 days for those who don't sort of, not into decans and that sort of thing, which I totally understand, using what I think are the astrological kind of energies and associations with that decan. I pick 3 or 4 of my decks, and then from each of those in the morning, or maybe a couple of those, I'll pull a card, and then I will journal on that. So I have my journal here, and let's have a look. So yeah, this one I was using the Mythic Tarot, and this Olympus Oracle, and I was pulling a card from each of those, and then I would journal on those. And then I also had other decks which I would then do in the evening, but my main card pull is in the morning, because that's when I have most energy. I have struggled a few years ago, when I was 40, I got breast cancer, and I had a lot of treatment for that, and I found since then my concentration has never really quite recovered, nor have my energy levels. And so I do have to be quite careful with conserving energy, and I find my best time is in the morning. So that's when I pull my cards and do my main journaling for energies that are coming through in the day ahead. And then I might also do a reading in the evening, and if I do a reading in the evening, it's quite often if I've chosen a pit deck, because I find pit decks more straightforward, and I might with those just do something like describe my day, just to keep in practice. And there's a bit of nudity, and I might do, oh, see, there's the creative imagination. This is what he's taking that into the church. And this is what Blake saw as the sort of sacred, really, the human taking that sacred into the church building. I find that very powerful, that image. That's this artist, Ed Burren's interpretation and kind of copy of it. There's an original frontispiece that Blake made. It's beautiful, that. And I also, for my journal, I do like to copy out. I make little miniature copies of my favourite decks so that I can stick them in. This is ones I've been doing recently. I might just scan those in and then print them out in a small size so that I can stick them in there. Those are decks I've been working with recently. And then also, if I design a card spread, I might draw that in here as well, because I do tend to use my own spreads. And if people ask for a reading, I'll often just design a spread for the reading. I haven't done that many readings, but that's something else I do. And then how has my practice evolved over time? Well, I've just got a lot of more decks recently, partly thanks to Hermit's Cave. Well, a lot of it's thanks to Hermit's Cave. I'm realising that I sort of have to rein it in, because otherwise it kind of gets out of hand and you just don't really have the time to focus on the decks you've got before you're on to, oh, there's the other next shiny thing. So that's partly why I've got my tarot deck that is going to limit me to having 78 because it's got 78 cards on it. I'm just going to limit myself to decks that I can fit on this, so 78 tarot decks basically. And then I might get some extra oracles, which I don't have too many oracles. And how's it evolved? Well, I've also, before I was only doing readings for myself, and I'd done some readings for friends and family, but quite recently I reached out to someone I didn't really know, only through social media, but they had written something that suggested they were having a bit of a difficult time, and I asked if they'd like a reading, and they said they would. So I did a reading for them and they were extremely pleased with it, and it made me realise that it's something that I could do more of. I think there's a lot of people out there doing tarot readings, but I'm certainly open and would like to offer readings to people that feel they need them. I don't think it's something I'm going to be charging for in the near future, but I feel like people will come into my life if they need a reading, and that's probably how that will go forward. Favourite all-time deck and why? Well, it's this one. At the moment anyway, Tarot of the Master. And I made this little pouch. I like making these little felt pouches for my favourite decks that I'm going to be carrying about. This one didn't actually come with a tuck box. It just came kind of loose from the infamous website that begins with an A and is a jungle. And I just love this one. It's that's obviously Dionysus with the leopard, and I think this may be a head in the bag. There's also a woman with a sort of head in a bag, because he did have two sides, Dionysus. His followers were used to tear apart a king who kept him from the city, but he was also the god of revelry and kind of divine madness in a way, and the release of things. But anyway, I'm getting too into these cards now. I better get on, otherwise this is going to take forever. But I just absolutely, I do like older decks. To me, there's something, and it's always been the same for me with literature even, something about art, people that have passed, and also the same with music. I play the violin, and when I'm playing tunes, I kind of feel like the person that created that is expressing themselves through me. It's almost like a type of mediumship. And I feel that with decks of artists that are no longer with us. And sometimes the older, the better. And when you feel like you've seen something that they put in that card, it's a very profound feeling of connection, a connection across time, that golden thread that connects you. Yeah, just love this deck. I also have the version that is not coloured. Hang on, I'll just go and get that. Yeah, so there's this version, which is Lo Scarabeo, which was a limited edition vachetta. And that's just the line drawings on the kind of faded paper without them being coloured. And I think this is beautiful as well. But there's just something about this version, and it's not the Lo Scarabeo. It's a 2020 reprint, the one I've got. And I love the backs. I just love everything about it. It's, you know, it could chip here, which I don't even mind that. It's just magic. It's just, there's some magic in this. And that's the old style of strength with both the pillar and the lion. And it was an illustrated pip deck, very illustrated. You know, you've got significant little animals, snails often associated with Hermes, or Tote, who is the older, or Thoth as a lot of people say it. I like to say Tote, the older version. Little bead. Yeah, I could just stare at this forever. Look at the expressions. It's just beautiful. It makes you want to cry. And the thought of somebody doing this all that time ago. Look at him with his little self-referential. He's a knight, but he's a fool as well. So humorous. And I just feel the soul of the person who made this was very visionary and kind of pure souled. Anyway, I love that one. I feel very connected to it, and I need to use it more. So next question, guides. Do you work with spirit guides, ancestors, or higher self? I think the tarot itself helps us to get in touch with all of those things. I have got some tantric, well, Hindu deity little things that I keep around that came from my uncle, who is on my Indian side of the family. And I do like to be in touch with Hindu deities, and I feel it puts me in touch with my ancestors as well. I have this book on one of my ancestors, who's like a 5 times great-grandfather of mine, and he was the first Anglican missionary that was sent over to Asia, well, India, Kerala in particular, in the beginning of the 19th century. He was originally a cordwainer, a type of shoemaker in the city of London, and he had a calling to go to India. And his son, who was also called Thomas Norton, ended up leaving the Anglican church for one thing or another. He didn't have an education as a result of his father taking him out to India when he was very young, so he wasn't able to go into the church himself, and he ended up becoming a naval officer and marrying a Catholic girl who had been adopted by some French ladies. But we think that she was Indian, because certainly my DNA is about 1/3 Indian, and my mum's about 2/3. So clearly there's a lot of Indian women on our side of the family, but unfortunately the records don't really tell us much about who they were, and that's kind of lost into the mists of time, at least for now. So I do like to bring certain things like that into my practice, and I feel that they speak to me through certain things. So yes, I do use those ancestors, and also I like having objects from relatives that are no longer with us, like my grandmother. And I think, yeah, that I believe the cards help us to get in touch with all of those sort of things. Whether they guide me, I think yes, there is a guiding influence there. Just getting my little deck that I made myself, just because I find it easier to have something to ruffle through while I'm speaking. And healing, how has it supported my healing? Well, I feel that I had, oops, there's my little stone there. I had cancer in 2012, breast cancer, and I was kind of in a very good place with a lot of things at that point, and a lot of things started to fall apart. I had to give up my job in television for a while. I'd become a series producer after a lot of years of, you know, working my way up in television. I ended up getting divorced from my then husband, and also I felt the treatment itself really took a lot out of me. That's an appropriate card, isn't it? Strength. Some of the treatment led to me becoming quite agoraphobic for a while. And from being a person that was very decisive, had an excellent memory, I started to suffer quite a lot of brain fog. And slowly I've accepted my new self, but I feel that I can get stuck in quite negative states of mind. And what I feel the tarot does is it breaks us out of that rut. It shows us other parts of ourselves. Because if I were to sit with a journal, it would probably just end up being a lot of very negative thoughts that are going around in my head. And people say, oh, write it out. But I think just writing out negativity tends to encourage negativity. And I've heard the same from other friends who've gone through traumatic experiences and are just encouraged to talk about it all the time. And I think what you do with just rehashing the old negative thoughts is you sort of strengthen those pathways, really. And what tarot does is it breaks that rut and allows you to get in touch with another type of yourself. It's not entirely a mirror in that it's almost like having another party there that allows a conversation to go in a different direction, and also just physically taking you away from screens and that need to be scrolling and looking at the news, which can become very gloomy, can't it? And enter your thoughts into a dark place. I think it instead turns your lens to other aspects, and you start to see joy, and you start to realize, I want to be creative and I want to do other things. I've got things to offer. I've got ideas. And that is all very, very healing. Plus, you've got this beautiful art a lot of the time. This is my deck that I made myself, and I just absolutely loved doing this project. I was amazed at what I could make out of just scraps of things that I'd collected in my home. So that's helped with my healing. And then intuition, how do I connect with and trust my intuition? Well, I don't really do it in a conscious way. I've just found that I can trust my intuition, and it just gives me the strength to do that with the tarot, and to try and do that, because sometimes, you know, you just don't make space for listening to your intuition. And what this does is it very intentionally allows you to sit down, think about what you want to ask, and find some answers through the cards. And I think, I don't sit there and go, how can I trust my intuition? I think it just happens. The process of tarot itself just helps you to learn to trust your intuition. Sometimes you do say, well, I'm not too sure about this, but that's fine. I think there's some things that you can't always be sure about. And that's part of your intuition, isn't it? Knowing when you can be sure, when you can't be sure. Being in touch with your feelings as well, which can be quite hard. When you've gone through certain things, you sort of cut yourself off from what you're really feeling. Certainly certain things that might have happened to us in the past, we become detached from ourselves almost as a coping mechanism, and it allows you to give yourself room to express yourself which when you've perhaps been shut down by certain situations or personalities in the past, you know, suddenly to have that space and permission to ask yourself things and answer is very powerful. So that's intuition. Journey. My tarot journey so far, I'd say, is extremely nascent because I haven't really been doing it that long. Just between 3 and 4 years when I first got tarot, but it's been a slow process. I'm now just starting to do readings for people that aren't friends or family. And so, yeah, it's nascent, but it's exciting, and it's something that I'm certainly looking to keep in my life at the moment. Knowledge. How do I learn and deepen my understanding of tarot? Well, lots of ways. I mean, I do have a lot of books. I have lots of books on lots of things, as does my husband, who has a lot of books on spirituality. But I think sometimes just reading things that aren't to do with tarot can bring stuff to the tarot. And I've been surprised at how much the knowledge that I've got from other aspects of reading kind of feeds into the tarot. Certainly in terms of, you know, if you know anything about Greek myths or just symbolism, you know, the fact that this is a mercurial little creature. And that, yeah, I think knowledge, just everything can feed into the tarot. It's like a sort of prism where the light goes in and comes out again, and it can come from all directions. And then lessons, a powerful lesson. I don't know if I've got one powerful lesson that I would stick with. I think there's lots of little lessons that I've learned. Sometimes it's insights into relationships with people. It's insights into how I could be different to get different outcomes of relationships. It's about how I stop myself from doing things that I could otherwise do or enjoy. Lots of little lessons. And I would say, yeah, no big lesson, but lots of little lessons. Then myth or misconception, a myth you'd like to debunk. Well, personally, I'm not into debunking myths. I think all myths have a place, and even if it's something you don't believe and you think that's a superstition, sometimes it has a place in tradition. I think about my fiddle playing, because I also do Irish music, Irish fiddle playing, and there's a lot of traditions that maybe you look at it and you think, well, why do they believe that? Why can't you just come and play the music like that? And I think it's important to understand that some things existed before we did, before there were lots of tarot decks. And, you know, maybe some of these things, such as people need to give you your first deck or you need to keep them in a silk, is because at those times that really made sense in the context of people not being able to have cards or wanting to protect the art of fortune telling, so that people didn't just go out there and damage other people. You know, there's no professional body as such to stop people doing tarot, or at least not in the UK. I think there might be in some countries actually rules about it, but you know, it could be a powerful thing and it could actually harm people. So to say that you need to have your deck from a first person could have given to you from someone else could have been a protective thing. And I'm just going to get another deck here. So I'm not into debunking myths. I think respect people's myths, and maybe understand that they came from a place, you know, of wanting to protect the way tarot was done. I know with Irish music that they have certain ideas of things being passed down to people, because it stops it just becoming a mishmash of anything. And although we might say, well, it's fair enough to use tarot however you want, there's also ideas that maybe there are traditions that are worth preserving in certain aspects, and if people want to do that, I think they should should be able to do that. And there's no such thing as a neutral point. If you say saying a myth is nonsense is as much a myth as saying it's true, you know, they're both fair points. So that's my take on myths. The only thing I would say is, if you're telling people that your way is the only way, then that's not good. But that's not really a myth, is it? That's more just a state of mind. So yeah, that's what I would say on that one. And appropriately, tutor has landed on that. Now, what's your current focus on your practice? Well, I really want it to help me to write a novel that I've been meaning to write for a very long time. In fact, I've had a few novels, but there's one in particular that I have sort of sketched out. But my ability to sit and concentrate for long periods of time is limited, and I'm hoping in some ways that the journaling and the tarot will help me to concentrate my thought and the way that that might create something that I want to create. And just doing the journaling at the moment is a manageable way. So that's now. Oracle. Do I use oracle cards? Well, I'm not sure what counts as an oracle. I don't use cards with little, what I call freak magnet philosophy sayings on them. What, you know, like, oh, be the person you want to be, or that sort of saying. I said that in a rather sort of snarky way. I think that's fine if people like those little things. I do, however, have a few decks like this one that are not tarot. So if that's an oracle, yes, I have got about 4 or 5, but they're on very specific themes. And because this is all very beautiful art from the 80s, and it's Olympians and things around those sort of Greek myths. So yes, I use that, and I've also got a Mists of Avalon one, things that work with certain themes of decks that I've got, yes, but not in terms of them saying an oracle, so to speak. Purpose. What role does tarot play in your purpose? Well, I think it's helping with creativity, and that's something I really want to work on. And I also think it helps with well-being and mental health. So that always helps with your purpose, doesn't it? Also, it helps with connection to other people to a certain extent, because obviously there's the sort of community as such around tarot, and to be able to be part of that is part of our purpose, I think, in the modern world, especially since some of our, you know, I've been working from home since COVID happened, and it's easy to become very disconnected. And I think doing something that is a shared interest with people allows you to reach out in certain ways. So the next question is, and I've got this one out because I'm pretty sure there's no nudity in this, no nude dogs in this deck, so I can safely go through it. What's your favourite question to ask the cards? Well, my most popular questions are the deck interviews I'm doing, because I've still got a lot of decks that I haven't interviewed, and so those, I have 10 questions for those, and I ask those every time I do a deck interview. And then the other most popular is probably at the end of the day, when I do a describe your day, which is partly just my tarot training for myself, because it helps to as well as reflect on the day, see things in the cards. So that's an easy one. Then probably secondary to that is the general kind of, if you're having difficulty with something, it's like I do often do a 3-card spread. 3 cards work a lot for a lot of things, don't they? And it will be the difficulty. Why am I having difficulty with this? What can I do to get over it, and what sort of outcome can I expect as a result, or variants on that type of thing. So that's probably the most common. Often in the morning it will just be what kind of energy can I manifest today to help with my day, or what sort of message do you think will be useful to me today? Something quite general like that. This deck is so adorable. If you're feeling a bit blue, oh look, Death. Oh, I just love it. I love dogs. Where was I? See, I've lost my train of thought again. So yeah, those are the most common questions I have. Ritual, do you have any rituals? Oh, now this one, yes, I do very much have rituals. This is one of the things I carry with me. So my little compass here. So yeah, so ideally I'm facing that way, which the park is over that way. And I also like to cleanse the space that I'm going to be reading in. And for that, I don't do smudging. I use this clary sage oil, or I get from the allotment a bit of fresh sage that I've got and kind of crush it up and maybe put it in a bit of water, because I don't like to do burning for cleansing. And I just put a little bit on my fingers like this. And then I do 9 is my special number. When I was 9 years old, I had a thing about doing things 9 times, and I've always had a very strong association with 9, and I do that 9 times to the cardinal points, and then I do it up and I do it down as well. And then I get my deck. This is my travelling deck, my Centennial Rider-Waite-Smith, which I keep in here with my little key features. And I do this with all new decks as well, but if I'm doing a reading somewhere else or important reading, I do 1, 2, and it takes quite a long, like this, 9 times, and I do that starting east actually, 9 times to each of the cardinal points and then up as well. And then I'm basically, then I shuffle after that. So that is my little ritual. And I also have other things to help me, which includes a mirror, because I take this in case some people feel they've got bad energy on them, or we feel there's a bad energy around, and you can just reflect that energy back. I don't cast evil things on people or anything like that, but I do, if I feel there's something bad coming on me, I return it to sender. And same for any querent that might come to me. And I also take bark and other essences. So I sometimes use this concentration essence to help me concentrate. Jeanne de Vries. It's a combination of essence, help with a feeling of mental alertness, because I do find reading can be quite tiring. Rock water is one I sometimes use because it makes you more receptive to things. And similarly with holly, that's quite good for Scorpios like me if we're feeling a bit prickly. Helps reduce that. And so that's those. I guess those count under the S as well as spiritual tools beside tarot. Yes, also I think I spoke earlier about Baglamukhi. She's one of the Dash Mahavidyas, which is one of the 10 great wisdoms. They're all aspects of the goddess, and she is particularly for stopping the mind, which can chatter, and stopping what is thought of as cleverness, but it's a kind of cleverness that gets in your way. A bit too much Queen of Swords, I suppose, but it's that rational, logical, chattering, cutting, too quick to criticise, cynical side of us that sometimes just needs quieting. And I do a mantra to her, which is very much about that. Some people think it's intended at one's enemies, but really it's intended at your own thoughts, certainly in tantric practice. And then I also use some divination sticks, which are based on these druid sticks. that my dad gave me, and he keeps things in silk. So this is the blue silk, which he has them wrapped in, and they're supposed to be made from the earth, and they're basically 16 geomantic forms that they can form, and they fall like that. And that one's the girl, Puella. So those I use for very quick questions. So next question, how has tarot transformed me? Well, I think the main thing that tarot does is help get me out of a rut. So when you're stuck in a certain mindset and you're trying to break out of it, I think tarot just helps that. And in fact, I'll show you one of the things that really helped with the transformation at the start of this year. Was I asked a question about exactly that, being stuck in a negative rut. And I've tried lots of things, and every time I do something, it seems like something happens to set me back, an illness or some bad luck or something along those lines. And I asked what was the main thing that I needed to look at to get me out of the rut. And it came up with this card. It was actually in a different deck in the tarot's colour, but this card, which is all about focusing on negative things and the things you've lost and ignoring what you still have. And that really spoke to me. And I asked, what's the thing that can really help get me out of that? And the answer was this card, love. And it almost, well, it did have me in tears, to be honest, because it made me realise that, you know, no matter what, we still have love, don't we? We can give love, even if we might have lost relationships or feel like, you know, we're alone. There's love to be given and there's love to receive from the world. And yeah, that's a powerful message. So the transformative power of love, I think, can't be underestimated. And the deck just showed me at the time that's exactly what I needed to hear. And it was quite powerful. Well, very powerful. So that is a transformative experience. And now, unpopular opinion. We're going from love to hate, aren't we, really? But I don't like to hate on anything. This isn't a hate. This is just a personal opinion. And if it's not true for you, you know, I don't hold it against you, and I hope you don't hold it against me. But one unpopular opinion I have is about black cardstock. And the reason is it's energy, colour energy, and it corresponds with aura energy really as well. And I think cards, like people, have aura. And there's one thing about black, and it's the reason you can have a black aura is that you're in a very negative mood, very deep depression, dark place. Or the other reason that you might be manifesting a black aura is that you're very powerful and you're able to block other people from reading you. And I think that's, on some level, we understand that. I think, you know, a lot of people go through a phase, don't they, of wearing black, and it's perhaps because they feel they need to protect themselves from being read, or perhaps they are in a deep depression, or perhaps a combination of both. And I think we often associate certain dark things with very powerful magic, don't we? You know, people think of witches as wearing black, which I don't think witches do necessarily wear black, but I think on a subconscious, the collective unconscious level, we realise that there's that black aura is very powerful blocking energy. And I find it, if I'm dealing with cards with black edging, black cardstock, I find it difficult to connect with the deck. Even if I might find the pictures beautiful once I pull them open, sometimes I find that I don't get the cards that I necessarily need, and I also find myself not flowing with the cards. I find myself becoming particularly drained by the images, and so I don't really have black cards, but I just got this one out because it's one of the very few decks where I risked getting something with these black edges. And I have to say, even though the images themselves are absolutely beautiful and all about flowers and so forth, there's something about this deck that I am finding it is kind of a bit blocking. So that's my unpopular opinion. Decks with black cardstock and how they can be very draining and difficult to read. And I think sometimes if you're in a negative space, they're not that helpful either. So that's my opinion. And I'm not sure whether I'm going to end up keeping this as a result. We shall see. Values. What are important values to you as a reader? Let's get the goddess out again. So important values to me as a reader. It's to be of service to people. You know, I think one thing that would put me off just reading for anybody would maybe be if it was, I wouldn't want to go to a party and just do kind of entertainment readings. I don't see that as the place of tarot. And I'd also worry about people just doing it as a joke, because I'm not up for that. I think it's a service, it's a therapeutic service, really. And also another value that's very important to me is confidentiality. I wouldn't want anybody to feel that they would have things about their reading shared, that I would even necessarily tell anybody that they'd come for a read. Well, I certainly wouldn't tell people they've come for a reading unless they made it clear that they wanted me to tell people that they'd done that. I wouldn't share the contents of the reading unless they've said it's okay for me to do so. So that is very important. And I also think admitting your limits. So whenever I do a reading for other people, I always say, if any of this doesn't ring true, trust your gut, that this is just what the cards are telling me. It may not be correct. And ultimately, the most important thing is about how you feel about something. And sometimes if there's something that the way they ask something, I'll say, I can't read for that particular question, particularly if it's about a third party, you know, particularly relationships. People want to know, how is that person doing this or that. Now, I would turn it, I would find a question in a way that they could ask something, which is, how can I react to my insecurity in this relationship, for example, rather than, is my partner cheating? Because I don't think that's fair to do that on someone who's not there. I love this card, Contemplation. She's on the unconscious, isn't it? The subconscious on the dark side of the moon. Where was I? So yes, I don't read for third parties. So basically that, be of service, be confidential, admit your limits, and don't read about third parties in a way that is disrespectful for them. Try and find a way that is useful for the querent in terms of their own behaviour and how they can react to things. Then a piece of wisdom I've gained through tarot. I don't know. I don't know that I have gained wisdom. Probably lots of little. And there's another of my favourite cards. That's my Deccan card. A piece of wisdom that I've gained. Strangely enough, it's actually to not be too open, because I think sometimes it's easy to spill our hearts out to other people, and I think sometimes you do actually have to be a little bit guarded. You know, there are malevolent powers in the world, And you need to learn how to protect yourself as well as how to open yourself up, which that may sound like a strange thing to learn from tarot, because I think a lot of people think about tarot as being, you know, open yourself up to the world. But I think if you are actually quite an emotional person, and you can be vulnerable, it's also good to learn about ways not to necessarily always be completely open to all. X factor. So what makes my tarot practice uniquely yours? I think it's just everybody's practice is unique, isn't it? It's unique because I'm unique, just as you're unique, just as we're all unique. I think we're all unique aspects of something, but then we're also all connected and have very similar aspects too. When I first got my deck, I immediately had a spread that I laid out, and no one had told me how to do that. It was kind of a pyramid spread, but it just came to me, and my little rituals that I do just came to me. So I think, yeah, we're unique persons and we attract unique energies. And that's the joy of tarot, that it can be the same deck and different people will use it in different ways and they will get something different from it. If you think about relationships, if you've been in different relationships, you sort of become a different person with each of those relationships. And I think the tarot, if you think of a tarot deck as a person, it also becomes different with different people. Authentic self, yeah, so that's all. Now, another thing I don't believe in is authentic selves, because I think you can be insincere, but I'm not sure that there is such a thing as inauthentic, because I think we're all many selves and we have different aspects to ourselves. And even if we're putting on a mask, I don't see that as inauthentic. I see that as an authentic mask, if that makes sense. I think we can have better selves and worse selves, that's for sure. And anyone who's spent any time with any sort of addiction, either in themselves or other people, knows there can be a lot of disassociation of saying, oh, that was them that did it, like your addict self, and trying to disown it in a way. And I think part of what, when you do is shadow work, is learn that your shadow is just as authentic as the things you like about yourself. So yeah, I think authentic self is just whatever is expressing. Zenith, what would be my highest expression or goal in tarot or spirituality? The highest expression would probably not be tarot. I really want to write a novel, and I want the tarot to help me to do that. So the highest expression would probably be tarot helping me to actually achieve that other creative goal. And that is the end of this little alphabet. So thank you so much, Simon, for letting me share a few of my thoughts, even if they're perhaps a little bit disjointed. All I can say is thank goodness for editing, and that I know how to edit on my computer, because I really admire those of you who've done this in one take, because honestly, the amount of takes it's taken me, not to mention all the dog barking and interruptions. Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. King of Cups. And I'll end it there and say, hope to see you in another video. Bye.